Welcome, students, and I hope you're having a great afternoon. We're now in week 6 of our class, and so now that we only have 2 more weeks left to this class, so every time I have students who are in week 6, I always tell students they need to start to order their books for the next semester. Don't wait until the very last minute to order your books. If you order your books in week 6 of your previous class, then by the time your books arrive for your next class, you won't have to be sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting while the rest of the class races ahead in assignments while you sit there twiddling your fingers waiting for books to arrive. So start now to order your books for next semester. I know, like, isn't this semester go so fast? You're already thinking about next semester, but that's true. So order your books for next semester. So if you're going to take English 105, order your English 105 books now. If you're going to take English 115 after this class, then you need to order your English 115 books now. So welcome to week 6, and this week we're going to work on many different things. We're going to be doing the week 6 discussion, quiz 6, and then I'll share my screen and we'll discuss the persuasive essay part 2, which is what's due this week. Okay, so we're working on the persuasive essay this week. So let's start with the week 6 discussion. In the week 6 discussion, you're going to be doing quote reflection. Quote reflection is going to be a collection of quotations from 12 different writers, and each writer is going to talk about what makes writing tick for them, or what writing means to them, and each writer will give good writing advice about what to do to write a good article, or write a good or what makes them want to write. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose one of these 12 quotations, and you're going to comment on how that quotation jives or coincides with your writing style. So for instance, Gwendolyn Brooks says that you should just write about what you know. And so that was my first choice, was Gwendolyn Brooks. Write about what you know. So I chose Gwendolyn Brooks' quotation, write about what you know, because as an Asian American, I have a unique perspective on Asian American stories and the Asian American point of view. And so when I write stories, I write from a feminine point of view, and I write from an Asian American point of view. And I write about my stories talk about my family, the foods we eat, the conflict between Asian values versus American values, and that sort of thing. So that's why that was the first quotation that resonated with me. And so in this discussion board, write about the quotation that resonates with you. Now, some students wrote about writing is consistency, writing is discipline. I can't remember which author wrote that. And so a lot of students wrote, and every day you got to practice to write. So a lot of students, that particular quotation resonated with them, in which then they commented, every single day I've got to have self-discipline to get myself to do my schoolwork, to find time for school, to write up my assignments. So for me, writing is self-discipline, and writing is constant practice. Another student wrote, well, English is not my first language, so that she also agreed with writing is a lot of practice, because practice makes perfect. And yet another student wrote, because one of the writers wrote, she writes because writing is about writing about the beauty of nature, writing about the beauty of the universe. Writing is about just all about beauty. You want to explain that beauty to the reader. And so a lot of students wrote, yes, I write poetry, and I agree that writing is all about, beauty and to instill beauty into the world. So, so choose a quotation that resonates with you. It doesn't have to be the one that I chose. I remember I did put in a sample post where I wrote about Gwendolyn Brooks, and suddenly the whole class went to Gwendolyn Brooks. So you don't have to choose what I choose. You can if you want to. So it's all up to you. Think to yourself, what is it that makes me want to write? Why do I love writing? Which one of these reflections or quotations resonates with me? And what will inspire me to write in the future? So that's week 6 discussion in a nutshell, is what makes, what resonates with you. Why do you love to write? What makes you get up in the morning to write? For some students, they don't like to write at all, so they don't get up in the morning to write. And so for me, the purpose of this class is to get my students to love writing, to learn enough writing skills so they feel confident in their writing skills in order to love writing, which is what happens to a lot of my students, actually. So that's the week 6 discussion forum. And then the quiz, week 6 quiz, will revolve around APA in-text citations. So once again, we use APA, so I always go over APA every once in a while in this class. APA, as I've said before, stands for the American. So now I'm going over the week 6 quiz. So I'm done with the week 6 forum, now moving on to the week 6 quiz. So APA stands for the American Psychological Association. And APA is a research notation method in which you give credit to the researcher, so to avoid plagiarism. If you don't give credit to the researcher properly, then Turnitin is going to register your paper as having plagiarism. And you want to have a low plagiarism score, not a high plagiarism score. So in order to keep your plagiarism score low, you have to cite your sources. So every time you have a numerical source, historical source, medical source, or any kind of unknown knowledge, you have to cite the source. And I always tell students that you use, and I've said this many times, use pie structure. In other words, P is the main point from the thesis. So this should be reviewed for you now if you've been watching my videos. I is for one in-text citation. E stands for explanation in 5 sentences of that in-text citation. So you could use that pie structure for your body paragraph structure. And so if an example of an in-text citation would be any kind of numerical data, like 55% of Americans love to drink Coca-Cola. And so you have to ask yourself, where did that 55% come from? Well, the 55% came from some researcher who polled 100 Americans and asked them, do you like Coca-Cola or Pepsi better? So we want to credit that researcher for having taken that poll, and we want to, by citing the source to avoid plagiarism. And so we put in, after we put in the 55% in-text citation inside the body of your body paragraph, you then put in the author name, date, and page number, and you put in quotation marks. You always got to put in quotation marks when you have a direct quote. Direct quote, so there are 2 kinds of quotes, actually three kinds of quotes. You have a direct quote when you cite the source word per word without changing the source, without changing the numbers, and you put it straight into your paper. And so that's called a direct quote. There you have to have quotation marks, and a beginning quotation mark at the beginning of your in-text citation, and an ending quotation mark at the end of your quotation. Then you put in Smith 2022 and page number, if there is a page number. If there is no page number, then you put in the paragraph number of the website. If there is no author name, then you put in the website name. And if there is no date, you put in N.D. So, and then a second kind of in-text citation is a paraphrase quote. A paraphrase quote is when you summarize the source in your own words. So instead of saying 55% of Americans love Coca-Cola, I would say more than half of Americans drink Coca-Cola, prefer Coca-Cola. So there I summarized in my own words the 55%, which is the direct quote, the 55% of Americans love Coca-Cola. So even if you summarize the quote in your own words, you still have to cite the source. Now that is a very common mistake that students think that if they put it in their own words, then that they could just use it. But no, you still got to cite the source, because you have to tell the reader, where did you get that where did you get that in-text citation from? How do you know that most Americans love to drink Coca-Cola? So you got to tell the reader where you got the information from to avoid plagiarism and to give credit to the researcher. So when we do a paraphrase quote, we don't need quotation marks. We just put in, and we don't need a page number. We just put in the author's name and date. And you put in the in-text citation inside the body of your paper. And a very common mistake among students is they put in the web address into the in-text citation, and we don't put in web addresses in in-text citations. So I think that it's because students confuse an in-text citation versus a reference citation. An in-text citation goes inside the body of the paper, whereas a reference citation goes at the end of your paper under references. And so then after you finish writing your entire paper, then after the last page of your paper, you put in the word references. Then you put in a list of all of your sources, and that's called a reference citation. Okay, so a reference citation is the full citation of your source at the end of your paper. And it's at the end of your paper that you put in the web address, not inside your paper. So for a reference citation, you would have the author's name, the date, the article name, the publication name, and then the date you retrieved the website, and then the web address. Okay, so that's how you do the reference citation at the end of the paper. And so that's pretty much APA in a nutshell. And in the quiz, week 6 quiz, the quiz will go over the differences between different kinds of reference citations, what's considered a good reference citation, what's considered an effective reference citation in which you're much more specific versus an ineffective reference citation in which you're kind of not specific. And I go over that in a lot more detail in my week 6 quiz video. And so I always tell students, you need to watch the video and take notes, because I always give the answers or the quiz answers on my quiz videos. So always watch my quiz videos and my weekly quiz lectures that I always post in the announcements before you take your week 6 quiz. And always remember to take your week 6 quiz during the week 6 week, because after the week 6 is over, then the quiz closes. And if you need to take the quiz, if you're late and you have a missing assignment, you can always email me if you want to retake the quiz, and I'll open the quiz up for you. So it's important for you to always take the quiz when the time comes to take the quiz. So much for week 6 quiz. And then the last thing you're going to do in week 6 is the persuasive essay part 3. Is it part 3 or part 2? Sorry, it's the persuasive essay part 2, because part 3 is week 8. That's correct. So for the second essay, you're going to be undergoing the writing process. Week 4 is when you had pre-writing, when you decided on the topic of your persuasive essay. Just like you did with the first essay, the 3 steps of the writing process is pre-writing, writing, rewriting. And so for essay 2, the pre-writing was in week 4, the writing was in week 6, and then the rewriting, which is your final draft, is in week 8. So for essay 2, which is your persuasive essay, you're going to remember 4, 6, 8. So here we are in week 6. You're in the second stage of the writing process, which is transforming your outline into a written draft of 5 paragraphs. So you're going to have, for your persuasive essay, you're going to have an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and you're going to have your conclusion. And you're going to add in your in-text citations, your APA source, so that you can learn to use APA in order to add credibility to your paper. We use APA to back up our claim, because whenever we write anything in English and whenever we make a claim, we have to back that up with credible evidence. And so how do you find credible evidence? And so first of all, we don't use Wikipedia, and we want to use peer-reviewed articles from the online library. So we always want to use scholarly sources, and you can also use Google Scholar to find scholarly sources for your paper. If you don't use credible sources for your paper, then you end up with a fallacy. Now, I will go over a fallacy or bias, or a biased paper. And you want to avoid bias by using credible, objective sources. And so I will go over that in much more detail when I teach English 105. But for now, I am going to go over just how to do a persuasive essay. And so in this section, or in this lesson, I'm going to go over or review once again a persuasive essay by giving you an example of what a previous student had done when she wrote her persuasive essay. This should be my second persuasive essay example. I think the first one was taking a hot shower. It was a couple of weeks ago. So I will now share my screen, and hopefully I don't have a gazillion files open. No, thank goodness I don't. Okay, so here you go. And so when we write a persuasive essay, we have an introduction, we have a hook, and so this student's hook was, and then which place do people prefer to live? Do people prefer to live? Let me make this bigger. In the country or in the city? So here, that's her topic. The city versus the country. Which is a better place to live? Okay, so that's her research question. Which is a better place to live? The city or the country? And so that's the hook that draws the reader into the essay, in which you ask a research question, and then the reader gets curious. Wow, really? Where should I live? The city or the country? And so you would write, and then she wrote that people love to live in the city because of all the great activities in the city. A city is a vibrant place to live, full of cultural activities. In New York City, a person can go to, notice how I don't say in New York City you can go to Broadway. Instead, I say a person. So instead of saying, which place do you prefer to live? Do you prefer to live in the country or in the city? And it's very common for people to get very conversational in their papers. So what I've done is I've replaced you and your with people and person. So instead of saying, which place do you prefer to live, which is very conversational, you want to have a more professional tone. So I said, which place do people prefer to live? So I replaced you and your with people and person. So which place do people prefer to live? Do people prefer to live in the country or in the city? So always use third person case, that's what people and person, that's third person case. So always use third person case for a more professional tone. So do people prefer to live in the country or in the city? Which is a better place to live? And people love to live in the city. So instead of saying, I love to live in the city, you would say, people love to live in the city. So you also replace first person case, I, with people. Or you can make up a story. Jane loves to live in, just like I did before, or Robert loves to live in the city. So you can make up a hypothetical person, a case study for your paper. But in any case, Always keep your paper to third person case, he, she, and they. Avoid using you, your. Avoid using I, my, us, we, our. And then stick to a person or a people or third person case for a more professional tone. So in New York City, a person can go to Broadway and see a play. There are many different kinds of restaurants in the city, such as Chinese restaurants, Greek restaurants, Lebanese restaurants, Japanese restaurants, French, Italian, and Spanish and Mexican restaurants. And by walking a block or two, a person can see all kinds of people walking by. Also, a city offers more job opportunities than in the country. Okay, so now I've got my 5 background sentences in order to introduce the thesis. So remember that in your introduction, you need to have a hook, 5 background sentences that state the problem or state the situation. So now I've got my 5 background sentences that state the situation. So now I'm going to write my thesis statement. Remember, my thesis statement has to have topic, opinion, and reason. And then the 3 reasons become your body paragraphs. They become your credible evidence for your persuasive essay. It's because of the reasons and the body paragraphs and the credible evidence that you're able to convince the reader of your point of view and that your point of view is correct. Because that's the purpose of writing a persuasive essay, is to convince the reader of your point of view. So, living in the city, so that's the topic, is better than living in the country. Okay, that's the opinion. Okay, so if it would help, I'll put in living in the city, that's the topic, is better than living in the, that's the opinion. Remember, TOR, because. Okay, so topic, opinion, reason, TOR. That's your thesis formula. As long as you have TOR, then you have an effective thesis statement. Remember, you have to have a what and a why to your thesis in order to have an effective thesis statement. So remember the exercise we did a couple of weeks back when we compared effective and non-effective thesis statements. So then you have reason 1, reason 2, reason 3. So because the city has more cultural activities, more job opportunities, and more shops and restaurants. Notice the parallel structure. So when you write a thesis statement, you want to have parallel structure. So if anyone wants to look up, I think I have a video on parallel structure in my Professor H writing channel. So always use parallel structure in your thesis statement in order to have a more elegant sentence. All right, so here you would have, paragraph 2, living in the city is better than living in the country because the city has more cultural activities. Paragraph 3, the city has more job opportunities. The city has more shops and restaurants than the country. Okay, has more job opportunities than the country. Also, the city has more hospitals, okay? So if someone gets sick, then you have a hospital that's nearby. Your neighbors are closer by. You don't have to travel as far. So that also, factors into why people like to live in the city, so that they could get better or more immediate medical care. All right, so I ran out of space for that. Okay, so then you have your conclusion. In your conclusion, you're going to repeat the thesis. Okay, so you write the thesis as the first sentence of your last paragraph. So you will write, living in the city is better than living in the country because the city, and you can reword this. It doesn't have to be exactly, has more cultural activities, more jobs, and more shops. So then you would write 5 summary sentences that summarize the highlights of your essay. In other words, what takeaway lessons can the reader get from your essay? And then here, write 5 or 7 sentences about each topic sentence, and use pie structure for your APA, in-text citation. Now, after the entire essay is finished, then you're going to write your reference citation at the very end, which I don't have room for. So I'm going to go over, okay, so at this point you can take a screenshot of this so that you have an example of the, because I'm about to clear it. So here you have your introduction, your 3 body paragraphs, and your conclusion, in which your thesis statement is this, okay? Your thesis statement is the last sentence of the first paragraph, and then it's the first sentence of the last paragraph. You're probably tired of hearing me say this, so, and when you put in your in-text citation, you could say that, let's see, 70%, so let's say I looked this up, okay? 70% of young people want to live in the city because of the city's cultural activities. All right, so let's say that you found this on a website, right? And then you have to remember to put in your beginning quotation mark, your ending quotation mark. This is a direct quote because I took it directly from a source. Then I'm going to put in Smith 2022, page 22. If there is no author, then I would write betterliving.org, and then I would put in the date. If there's no date, then I would put in Better Living website, and then I would put in ND, that sort of thing, okay? So that's all you need in an in-text citation. You just need to have the author's name and the date. You don't need a page number. And here, let's see, if you don't have a page number, then on a website you count paragraph number, okay? So if there's no page number, then you would write paragraph number, okay? Paragraph number. So that's basically how you would do an in-text citation, so that you would have the main point, P, from the thesis statement. Then you have your one in-text citation, I, from your source. And now you're going to write 5 sentences to explain what you mean. What do you mean by cultural activities? And so you would say, you would say, in Los Angeles, a person can watch an opera at the Opera House, at the Dorothy Pavilion Opera House. A person can watch a play at the Geffen Playhouse. A person can visit a museum at LAPU or at the Hammer Museum, that sort of thing. So all the whatever cultural activities you write 5 sentences that give an example of whatever your in-text citation talks about. So in this case, I was talking about cultural activities, so I'm going to write 5 sentences about cultural activities. That's it. Now your body paragraph finished. So that's pie structure in a nutshell. And you can do the same, repeat the same thing, pie structure, for each of the, let me see if I stretch this out. Okay, so you can for each of the paragraphs, okay, for each of these paragraphs, you can put in an in-text citation, then 5 sentences, an in-text citation, and 5 sentences. Anyway, so you do all of that for your 3 body paragraphs. Then at the very end, okay, of your paper, you'll write references. And then you're going to, and it's here where you put your web address, you put the full citation. And so remember that your reference citations should match your in-text citations, okay? So if you have 3, let's say you have 3 in-text citations, it should match whatever Smith, Jones, better living, that sort of thing, okay? So that way, let's say I'm the reader. Why do we have APA in-text citations? What are they for? Well, for one thing, it makes the reader will know you didn't just make this up off the top of your head. It makes your evidence look more real. And let's say I'm the reader and I'm like curious, really living in the city is really that great? Wow, I want to find out more about this. Where can I read more about it? Ooh, I can go to Smith in 2022 and then I can look it up and Google that. I want to Google it, that sort of things. This is the reason why we put in, besides avoiding plagiarism, also if the reader is curious and wants to do further research on that particular fact, that person can then Google it and find out for themselves, especially if they want to move from wherever they are and they're reading your article to research the idea, well, maybe I want to move out of this city, maybe I want to move into the country, maybe I want to, so if somebody is researching and trying to make a decision in their life and they're reading your article for information and then they want more information, that's why we have reference citations. That's why we have, so that readers can then look it up. Okay, so, and also if you want to do more research, let's say you're doing a research paper, you can always look at the references of somebody else's article to find more references for your research paper. That's why research is endless. Somebody can spend years on their PhD dissertation, and your PhD dissertation can be 500 pages. Okay, so it can go forever. So anyway, let's write it in. So Smith, Patrick. Always put the last name first, then the first name. Then you can put in if there is an initial, okay? And then you put J if there's an initial. Then you put in the date. Remember that your source has to be within the last 10 years. Otherwise, your source is too old. So don't use sources that are more than 10 years old. Then you're going to put in the name of this. So Better Living or City versus Country Living. Let's say that's the name. Now normally I would have to italicize this. I don't think I can italicize it in this in this whatchamacallit. So anyway, so then you would put a dot, then you would write Better Living Magazine. Okay? In other words, where's the source? Where's the publication source? Where did you, it could also be the name of a website, okay? Better Living website. Either it's the name of the magazine or the name of the website. That goes over there. Then you would write, oh, and don't forget the periods, okay? Always put a period after each section. Then you write retrieve. In other words, when did you retrieve the website? So today's date is January 5th, 2023. I'm still not used to the new year. Okay, so today's January 5th, 2023 from, and then you just put in the name of the database or website. So here you put in name of database or website address. You don't have to put in the database website address. Just put in retrieved from Eric database, or retrieved from, I can think of the, now I'm blanking out, but if you got your source from the online library, from the Azusa Pacific online library, then you can put in the name of your database. You don't have to put in the database web address anymore. That's the old APA. The new APA, you just put in the name Eric from Eric database. Or if you got it from a website, www.cdc.org, for instance, okay, retrieved from. So that's it, all right? So that's your entire essay in a nutshell. So I'm going to stop sharing. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then whenever I stop sharing, that means we're nearing the end of the lesson. So that usually signals, oh wow, she's almost done. Now I can stop watching this. So I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. And if you have any questions at all about how to write a persuasive essay or how to do APA, you can always email me. And I went way too long. Okay, so I'm going to try to cut it really short next time. Okay, so have a great week. And if you have any questions, email me.